The collapse of a factory in Bangladesh.
The worst garment industry accident in history.
Rana Plaza collapsed in 2013. About 1,400, especially poor girls, young girls that worked in that building were killed. You saw these dramatical and awful photos and documentation of this collapse.
Arne Nygaard, professor of Christiania University College, associate editor for Sustainable Supply Chain Management.
A lot of journalists start asking questions because underneath they found fashion clothes from several fashion chains that also were profiling their chains as sustainable. Everybody saw that this is not a good thing. This is the price of information asymmetry. When we consumed clothes far away, we didn't care. We didn't care so much until this collapse happened.
Until we became more aware. I have a question, and I'm not trying to be overly provocative or controversial here, but I couldn't help but think, what about the locals? Why do you suppose locally there were not more people protesting like you and I would?
It's a dictatorship, more or less a dictatorship.
So it's normalized.
And it's normalized. You shouldn't stand out. You shouldn't have unions. It's not free, open society that we are used to. And that's why you don't hear much about it.
What do you think most people are unaware of when it comes to an electric vehicle, when we talk about supply chain?
When it comes to critical minerals that is used in each of the electric cars. For instance, it's about 200 kilos of critical minerals in each car, especially in the batteries. And we know that when we increase the demand for electric cars, we also make Europe and the US more dependent on critical minerals from totalitarian regimes. Unstable regimes. We experienced how dangerous it is to become dependent on energy sources from Russia when Russia attacked Ukraine. So that we need to be more aware of the fundamental threats to the supply chain in general, but especially when it comes to energy, because it's so disruptive.
Bonded by Science, proudly presented by Nobel Blocks.
First, I would like to say thank you, Arne, for joining us on Bonded by Science. You have many years as a researcher, professor, and I would imagine you're involved in many other projects, which give you a lot of insight into what we'll be talking about today. I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us on Bonded by Science.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to communicate in an important area here that I feel is becoming more and more essential, and that we need knowledge in several aspects of the green shift. So
right. Okay, I have a few questions for you. And one of them is, do you believe that climate change is real?
I believe it.
Do you believe that our current activities are facilitating climate change?
Yes, I think we have to admit that we have an essential responsibility for the development right now.
And on a scale from 0 to 100, to what extent would you say people are normalized to warnings of calls for sustainability?
Well, I guess 90%. It's difficult and perhaps not a good idea to say 100%, but 90% for sure.
What would you say to people who feel like spectators to an impending apocalypse?
Well, I will say that we need to take decisions and take responsibility for our own actions, and also try to affect the life around us.
Arne, I I would like to go a little bit more into your work. You have some really interesting combinations in the projects that you are researching and the ones that you are running. And I know you've done especially a lot of work around greenwashing as a subject matter, and that you're linking some of that research to our current geopolitical situations. And for the first part, could you explain, at least like to the best that you can, how you think COVID influenced us? When most people saw COVID, they became more aware of things like supply chains, but they were typically seen through the lens of how we extended, the delay in whatever product it was that we ordered or some sort of purchase. I mean, that was our experience, like our direct experience with the supply chain. That's about as close as we got. But how would you describe the changes in supply chain from pre to post COVID now?
Well, it's obvious that people didn't think much about the supply chain at all. They thought the supply chain was like a clockwork. It worked efficiently on time when they did their shopping. It was all the goods products were in the shop at the right time, at the right volumes, and the right products. So there were absolutely no problems until the spring of 2020, when we had this close downs, especially in China, that created a lot of problems all around in Europe, and also in combination with the other problems like surging energy prices, and also the war starting in the Ukraine, and after that the war in the Middle East. So all of these factors have not only affected us as consumers, but also the threat against the actions that we need to do to stop the climate change.
And what do you think that people need better help in understanding about supply chains when it comes to its influence over the green transition or climate change, for that matter?
Yes, absolutely. It's it has, as I said, different sources of risk here. But the fact is that the climate change is essential, and we need to do the green shift. But the supply chains has been one of the essential structural variables that we have to think about. The thing is that the supply chains were a lot shorter only 25 years ago, until China became a member of the World Trade Organization in 2001. The power within the supply chains has been located in the West, in Europe, and in the US, in countries that we know, in countries where you have freedom of press, you have organizational freedom, you have labor unions, you have political freedom, you have freedom of speech, and so forth. So that you had a control of the supply chain from the beginning to the end, so that you could have journalists bringing in critical areas of destructive management in the production of products because you had a free press. But when you started moving a large volume of industrial capacity of production to totalitarian countries, especially in China, but also other countries in the third world, the information asymmetry became a huge problem in the way that you couldn't really find out what happened at the beginning of the supply chain. And that's a huge problem.
So when you talk about information asymmetry, because that is a really, really interesting term, can you explain a little bit further to someone like me, or say, for example, my son, he's just a young man. What would you say to him?
Well, you probably had industries in your close neighborhood, you know. For instance, here in Oslo, you had shoe manufacturers.
Yes.
You had industry that manufactured textiles or clothes and fashion, and you had control of what happened within the industry because you had local journalists writing about critical areas of production. If there were a strike, some labor unions criticized the lack of corporate responsibility, for instance. But when you moved that production to dictatorships in Asia, that became a crucial problem. But we didn't actually notice it before some few years ago.
Okay, so because that was the problem, right? Like the problem was that we didn't notice the problem, and by not noticing the problem, that was in fact the problem. There were no reporters, there were no journalists that could really like call it out and hold people accountable. In essence, and this is probably why one could argue it took so long for us to notice, or one could also argue that it's taking us a little longer to respond, at least on an emotional level. And maybe because we can see now that if we don't, it will affect us too. So there will be many reasons why I'm sure we could debate as to why that information asymmetry has taken so long to come into light. But that information asymmetry basically means, if I understand it correctly, that I don't really have any idea on how the food that I am consuming, the products that I am purchasing, we don't have any clear picture of how all of that is done. And, even like, the planes that I'm traveling on, like how they're produced, the cars that I'm driving or buying, how are they produced? Like, I don't have any idea of that, how it's put together, by whom, where was the materials, the minerals extracted, the materials made, how was it refined, all of that. And I'm not sure I would feel okay if I knew everything. And I suppose that is what information asymmetry is, and that's what we're talking about, correct?
Yes. Let's take a good example of information asymmetry. The fashion industry has moved a lot of capacity to the third world because it's cheaper labor. The cost of labor is far less than in the West. So that they have moved a lot of industrial capacity to other countries in Asia and also Middle East and Africa. And then we had this Rana Plaza collapse in 2013, where about 1,400, especially poor young girls, that worked in that in that building, were killed, and you saw this dramatical and awful photos and film documentation of this collapse of this industrial building, and then a lot of journalists started asking questions, because underneath the bodies they had to take out, they found fashion clothes from several fashion chains that also were profiling their own chains as sustainable. Then everybody saw that this is not a good thing. This is the price of information asymmetry, because they were forced into a building that was really dangerous. That had never happened in a European country or in the US. But when we consumed clothes and fashion far away, like from Sri Lanka, we didn't care. We didn't care so much until this collapse happened.
Until we became more aware.
Yeah.
I have a question, and I'm not trying to be overly provocative or controversial here, but I couldn't help but think, what about the locals? Like the local individuals that live there, the parents of these young women. Why do you suppose locally there were not more people protesting like you and I would, if that was the situation here, or even if the situation started to arise? What do you think is the reasons why locally you're not seeing the same resistance, or you're seeing people putting up a fight for the things that they feel or know are unsafe? Why are they not resisting?
Well, first of all, there were a lot of tension and resistance when that collapse happened. But after the collapse, and also driven by the activist groups in the West, by journalists, for instance, from The Guardian and other news media. But your question is a good question, because it's a dictatorship, more or less a dictatorship.
So it's normalized.
And it's normalized. You shouldn't stand out. You shouldn't have unions. It's not a free, open society that we are used to, and that's why you don't hear much about it. So you had about the same situation in Phnom Penh when the NS Mavericks workers didn't get their the pay for their work because of some opportunistic trade deals that was illegal, and it was a lot of demonstrations, but it was a clash between the demonstrators and the workers, and several people were killed. So it's when we see that happen, we see that the information asymmetry is not only a nice theoretical work to to play with in academic articles, but it's something real. It creates a lot of opportunistic behavior from the investors, from the supply chains that sort of take advantage of kind of a human slavery, and also the uncertainty and the really risky production that also happens in the other side of the supply chain.
Yes, and that's also where the term, I think, which could be relevant to bring up now, is greenwashing, where we see that, as you mentioned, this is something that was pushed out in the fashion industry as being sustainable. And in your most horrific way, they were found out that it was very untrue. So can you take a few moments and explain generally what is greenwashing and how is that linked to our supply chain?
Yeah, well, greenwashing is a way to portray or present a product as green when it's not a green product.
What is a green product? Like what is a green product?
Sustainable product with a low environmental footprint, produced with a human and corporate responsibility, and in a responsible way of production. But what we see now is that perhaps 50%, for instance, of all the products sold in the EU on the internet sales of products in the EU is greenwashed. They use green sustainable communication when it's not documentation that the product is really sustainable.
Would you say, if I was to go into a grocery store, if I was to go shopping for clothes or buying some stuff online, what type of labels would I actually look for?
Well, it's often labels that is misusing their communication, their description of the product itself, and you can't find any solid documentation of sustainability of the product. So that's why it's called greenwashing. Greenwashing is a problem in itself because you buy a product. If you want to buy a green product that is not green, that's a problem, of course, because you buy something that you don't want. But the other and more serious problem connected to greenwashing is what you call the lemons problem. And the lemons problem, that is a problem of greenwashed products out competing the real green products. That's a really serious situation that we now see.
Can you give a more specific example of what you said? The lemons market, or a lemon, just like the lemons problem. Is it called the lemon market, or is it just called a lemon?
You can also call it a lemons market.
Lemons market. Yeah. Could you give an example?
Yeah, you have you call it a lemons problem because you had this classic academic paper published by Akerlof in 1970 that he where he got the Nobel Prize because of that contribution. And it's really a kind of a trivial observation, namely the observation in a market like Akerlof saw in the southern part of California, where he observed the car dealers, where some car dealers they sold terrible cars, also called lemons in the U.S. It's that's why we call it the lemons market, because it's a situation where the seller know much more about the real quality of the product than the buyer, and in that situation like that, the true good cars, what he calls the peach cars, they will these car dealers that sell the peach cars, the good cars, they will withdraw from the market, and the dynamics of the market will at the end crash the market in a way that you will only sell lemons cars, and so that kind of dynamics we can also see when it comes to greenwashed products. Okay, so it's a really dangerous situation where you end up in a situation where people buy products that they believe is green, but it's not green, but the greenwash products are sold cheaper than the true green products, and that's why the true green products will disappear from the market.
Correct. And at the same time, you're paying a lot more for a product than you should be. That's the other part too, because that's the incentive, right? For the person that is doing the greenwashing, is that they can, at least I read this in your paper, that the person doing the greenwashing, they can charge premium prices, and because people are willing to pay those premium prices for a product that they believe is, more sustainable, then, they're cheating essentially.
We can see that in the markets, you have not only one market. We call it the market, but it consists of several segments in the market, and one of the segments is the green segment. It's a segment of people who really want to pay a price premium for the green product, and these people are often people like us, well-educated people. And because you have more education, you have a better job, you have more income, so that the willingness to pay for green products are higher. So it's kind of a price premium for the green product, and that's why the greenwashed products is coming in, because it's a huge incentive to go into these markets for
it's lucrative
products. It's really lucrative. That's
it
true.
Can be. Yeah, it can be.
So that if you can paint your product green in some way, use the logo, say that, for instance, the package is really green. You don't say anything about the product itself, but you say that the paper is recirculated paper or something like that. Or you can use the colors. We know that the green and blue colors are triggers to people who won't believe things are green.
Yeah.
So that it's a number of dirty tricks to paint a product green, to communicate that the product is green.
It's pure manipulation, right?
It's pure manipulation, and you can use the logos, the brand itself, and you can also use certification systems to, without monitoring, some certified products are not really green either. So we have a lot of problems certifying that the products are really green, so that when we go and pick the product, we do not pick the greener washed product. We have to go for the true green products. And as we talked about, given all the asymmetry in the supply chains, that is increasingly difficult to do.
But you have proposed a couple solutions to help mitigate this problem. One, of course, is not to do away with the certification, but because that plays a role. But you mentioned blockchain technology as a way forward. Would you put a few words on that?
Yes. As we talked about, you have production in countries without institutions. Totalitarian regimes typically hasn't got the legal system that you have in the West. You don't have the democratic based institutions that creates the legal system, and it's the legal system that is supporting the brands and the certifications that we normally use to safeguard the quality that the consumer want to buy. In a totalitarian society, you don't have the true legal system, the legal institutions. So that's why I've been working on the blockchain system to support production, to support the authenticity of the products produced under uncertain legal conditions, so that you can find out more about the authenticity of the product. You can find out something about the traceability, where the product really come from, and also the validity of the information in the blockchain. So in my opinion, the blockchain can support both brands and certification systems to safeguard the authenticity of the product, so that you know exactly what you're buying when you go to the store.
Do you think enough people know what blockchain is? And what I mean is, like, if I say the words apple banana, then you will do authenticity. Apple banana will be transparent. Apple banana, in my personal opinion, I don't believe that enough people will understand that blockchain technology, like what it is. And when I read your papers, I can see that you are proposing this as a solution. And I'm totally on board with it. Like, I definitely believe that blockchain technology can deliver on those promises. But I don't think enough people know is what blockchain is. And I'm wondering, is like the first step to really like getting to a solution where we can mitigate things like greenwashing, do we need to educate people on what blockchain is first? Is that something you see as a necessary step forward in order to, help address some of these problems?
Yeah, I think that some of the supply chains have to respond to the situation that we talked about. The terrible work conditions in Rana Plaza before the collapse, for instance, or other similar situations that we read about in the newspapers after people have been killed because of terrible working conditions and so forth. People want to more and more to find out where the product are coming from. So that when you want to build your brand in the future, I think that it's an incentives within the supply chains to produce more solid and valid information about where and how the products are produced, so that when you go to the store, you can have like everybody else have your iPhone with you, and
I'm an Android user,
and you can just find out based on traceability information, where is the tuna fish that you buy? Where does it come from? When exactly is it catched from, for instance, outside in the ocean in Malaysia and in Indonesia? Where is it catched there? And through blockchain systems that is transparent, you can have also some activist groups like WWF finding out if that information is true or not. You can connect the catch of the tuna fish that you buy to the labor unions, to the state authorities that is also supposed to monitor the situation, so that you're not buying a tuna fish that is on the red list of species that you shouldn't catch. And also you can control that the fishermen, as we know, the fisheries in the Southeast Asia is a huge problem when it comes to slavery, human slavery. So that we know that the fisherman that has caught that exact fish that you buy is member of a labor union and not a slave. So that you have more valid information that can't be deleted or manipulated, because it's on hundreds of computers all around the world. It's cryptated information, and it's decentralized, so it's no central unit that can manipulate you to buy a product that is not green or sustainable. So that's the core idea here.
I really like the idea very, very much. And I was thinking that if I'm in a grocery store and I want to check out where like the tuna fish came from, or any other product for that matter, whatever my heart desires, whatever is available to me, I was just thinking, how did it get on the shelf in the first place? Why should I have to be the one to double check it? That, it's already on the shelf. I feel like somehow there's responsibility that should have been taken before it landed on the shelf. And maybe some people would argue against that. Like, you're removing the decision for me and I should be allowed to take those decisions. I should have that choice. And I agree with that argument. I just feel like sometimes you can weigh the pros and cons of certain situations, and sometimes one side is just heavier than the other. So would you say that the product itself shouldn't even have made it to the shelf?
Well, it's it's a situation where you cannot use trust as a as a concept anymore when it comes to supply chains, because it's so complex and it's so global. And also, in addition to that, you also have sustainable goals that is also complex. It's difficult to measure by using metrics what kind of sustainable performance each product really has. That's why it's more applicable to use blockchain to support the conventional ideas about brands and certifications.
Yes, and I agree with that. I think my point, or what I wanted to raise, was why is it the individual in the grocery store that is having to double check on their phone where the product is sourced? My argument is that it should actually occur before it ends up on the shelf. Maybe I can still check it, but and we can obviously use blockchain technology there. I was just thinking that shouldn't there have been some responsibility prior to it landing on the shelf, like some accountability? The grocery store chain, that is opening up in our community, right? Like if our community has, in general, leans towards the green transition, then that should be honored community-wide. So it was more about that.
Well, in the theory of marketing and also economics, it's the fundamental assumption is that the consumer sovereignty to take the right decisions is really fundamental.
Yeah, it's what drives democracy, right?
Yes, it's the freedom to choose in market.
Choose. Yeah,
and we have to think about if we move that authority to somebody else, who can that be? Should we trust one authority that can take that decision away for us if it's not kind of poisonous product, or it's a problem and it comes to risk and so forth. That's something else. But in general, the sovereignty to take your own decisions when you want to buy something at the grocery store, it's really fundamental.
Well, I guess we could say that sometimes these decisions have already been made for us. Like a lot of products don't get on grocery store shelves because they don't satisfy, basic food and drug regulations, right? So we have certain, requirements that we impose, like in the EU anyways. We have, in some ways, even more strict requirements regarding our food than the US. And I think there was like some really big stories that came out about that. So I would say we do actually have a system in place already. And I think the difficulty here is that this is much bigger, right? This reaches everywhere, not just our food. So it's more than an isolated problem. Sustainability is generally a much bigger issue because it touches on all products that we consume and a lot of services that we are using. And potentially this is the solution that's going to help us mitigate climate change. I think we both agree. And you said to me that, yes, you believe that climate change is real. You're pushing for the green transition. I, myself, and many other people that I know are doing that also. But we are still taking those ideologies and we are imposing them on other places that maybe don't want them. And we forget that not everybody thinks like us and holds the same values. And I would like to hope, of course, and I hope that we are right.
I think we are right, but the consumers need more alternatives. That is more competitive and better green products. So that's another topic that we could talk a lot about. You know, the innovation, the need for innovation, entrepreneurship in the markets is essential to go to fix the green shift. So we need more better green products that can outcompete the unsustainable products. So we see that, for instance, in the car industry, that you have now many cars, electric cars, that are really great cars that not in all markets, but in some markets outcompete the unsustainable old technology cars. So we need more entrepreneurship and innovation in the green shift.
Yeah,
And that's
I'm really happy that you brought up cars, because I think like some people believe that the transportation sector is going to be a huge driver for green transition. So transportation, primarily vehicles, cars as we know them, trucks, maybe short range ships, potentially in the long term, long range shipping. That will be a lot longer out in the future, but at least short range. So if we circle back to the supply chain, what do you think most people are unaware of when it comes to an electric vehicle when we talk about supply chain?
Well, as you said right now, it's a problem when it comes to the critical minerals that is used in each of the electric cars. For instance, it's about 200 kilos of critical minerals in each car, especially in the batteries. And we know that when we increase the demand for electric cars, we also make Europe and the US more dependent on critical minerals from totalitarian regimes, unstable regimes, and we experienced how dangerous it is to become dependent on energy sources from Russia when Russia attacked Ukraine. So that we need to be more aware of the fundamental threat to the supply chain in general, but especially when it comes to energy, because it's so disruptive. It's so essential for economic growth and the societies in the West and in the US in general. So that's why it's a mix of problems, of threats. It's what I call the perfect storm here. As we see now in Asia, for instance, in Taiwan, the Taiwan question now is also one of the areas that is getting more and more attention because of the military activity from China. And we also know that about 40% of everything that we consume in Europe and in the US goes through the Strait of Taiwan. 40%. And also we know that about 90% of the most advanced microchips that we also use in several of the products in the green shift, and in military products that make and everything else is made in Taiwan. So it's a huge risk right there. And if you add the war in the Middle East, where you know that about 10 to 15% of all the world trade goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, it adds a huge risk to consumption and to the supply chains in general, but also to the green shift, to everything that we produce that is green, because green products are essentially connected to both advanced microchips and computer systems, sensor systems, but also the critical minerals from some of these countries, especially China.
Yes, and I think that we should just be really very clear here. What we are describing here is a risk. Others may see it as a vulnerability. They're probably, in this case, the same thing. But we have a lot of critical minerals, as you said, copper, cobalt, lithium, and graphite, to name a few. And all of them go into helping build products that you just mentioned, especially like EVs and other, products that are, helping us with the green transition. And I'm wondering if a lot of people, do they realize, or maybe they don't recognize, how much, the majority of refineries, not necessarily the mines, but the refineries, are typically situated like in the global south, or as you said, China, for example, holds a lot of these refineries. They're existing in just a few places around the world. And that is where the centralization becomes a factor to consider. That is the centralization that you're talking about here. That is the risk. That is us becoming dependent on one source. And when we opened our conversation today, we talked a little bit about when we experienced COVID, and most people just saw it as a delay in a particular product or service that was being shipped. We didn't take the extra step. Some people didn't take the extra step to say, hey, no. This product is coming all the way from another part of the world. And that's where all the materials are being produced. And even if you wanted to produce something locally, to build something locally now, the chances are that your raw materials will come from one of these very few locations around the world. And ironically, in order to get to the green transition and to get more independence, we become more dependent on those that provide those materials. It's a really, really interesting cycle.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And given the huge risk now, we should probably do the same thing as the producer of Barbie dolls, and that's
Barbie. How does
Barbie dolls.
How did Barbie make it here?
I have to bring forward the excellent strategy brought forward by Barbie.
Okay, please explain.
Barbie has moved from Indonesia, where she was produced and born, Indonesia, to Mexico. So it's closer to the markets. And we see that it's a new trend now because of this huge threat against supply chains in general, but also against the green shift and everything else that we see, sending products from China to Europe. It's an increasing threat now. So that's why you call this de-risking or nearshoring, so that you bring the production closer to the markets. That means less risk to the supply chains, and also more control over what is going on when it comes to the sustainable production at the other end of the production line.
I see the logic in bringing things closer to the market. I see the logic in essentially decentralizing origins of products, but realistically, what's the timeline here? Like a refinery, to get that up and going. Like, mines are one thing because we can constantly do rediscovery. We can look, we can probe. But refineries, I mean, that's a huge setup in our backyard. And maybe we don't want it there, but maybe we might need it there. What is the timeline here? Where do you see, like, what's the biggest obstacle even?
That's one of the dilemmas that we have in the West, you know. We need to have innovations and entrepreneurship when it comes to the processes and sourcing of critical minerals. And we see that in Norway, where you have a lot of minerals. Norway is as you know, it's a country made of stone. So that's why it's a lot of minerals here. And but of course, all the green activist groups are really critical to the development of production of minerals. But I don't think we have any choice. EU is now looking into this. The US, of course, because of the situation when it comes to the geopolitical risk, and all over Europe, and also in Scandinavia, it's a new gold rush. It's a new exploration for critical minerals. So only half a year ago, they found a huge source of rare earth elements in Denmark, in Norway. So that is going on now all over Europe. You are also going to look at the continental shelf in the North Sea to see if you can have subwater production of critical minerals, for instance. So that demands a new approach when it comes to technological innovation and exploration. So that's an interesting development, and as you say, it will take time, but it's necessary to do something about
and
this.
I know you're not a geologist. I know that you don't and haven't worked in a major refinery plant. But given your experience, how long are we looking at here?
Well, I think given the technological development and the geopolitical interest surrounding this, it will take less than 10 years before something will happen when it comes to the production. But that's my guess.
Yeah.
It might take longer.
And that's optimistic.
We know little about the sources here and the exploration, but we know that we cannot accept to become dependent on totalitarian regimes at the other end of the supply chain. That's really dangerous for our democracies, for our freedom, in both in Europe and in the US. That's why it will take a lot of resources and innovation to explore this, but it will take a shorter time than.
Do you think we have enough local talent? Because what we saw, at least what I know, is a lot of knowledge and know-how is generated when we're working in some of these huge production plants like refineries. I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. That's the home of Dofasco and Stelco Steel. I think now they are bought up by another major company, but I worked there for a summer when I was in university, and there was a lot of knowledge in there, and it wasn't written down. And one would probably it doesn't take we don't have to be rocket scientists here to know that a lot of that knowledge and going into those refineries and building them up. Do we have the in-house knowledge locally to build it up? And is that going to be another realistic barrier as well?
It's a barrier, but you have had, like in Canada, and Australia, and in countries like Norway and Sweden, you have a lot of exploration of minerals going on, and you have a competence when it comes to production of minerals, so that you can develop this knowledge to find and explore and develop other resources that we have to.
Yeah. I actually think like geologists they're pretty wise, really strong. I know in Canada, actually, I have some friends that work in that industry, and they're some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And so I know we have a lot of talent there. I was thinking more about like setting up the refineries and getting it operational.
I agree. In Norway and also elsewhere, you have also an oil industry that is also a highly competent industry, especially offshore industry. And we know that it's huge resources in the continental shelves around in the oceans. But it will create a necessity for more competence and innovation to have a sustainable production, of course, in the West, because you have democracy and the activist groups, you have a free press that will also correct. It will be controlling institutions that you don't have in developed nations. So that I think this will go on. It will meet a lot of problems. It will meet a lot of demonstrations and criticism. But you need to do something about this.
I suppose there'll also be a lot of opportunity as well, especially for those that are curious about this particular industry. It will create a lot of like new opportunities. There will be talent that will naturally flourish, of course. People that have an interest in mining, refinery, production, manufacturing. Like we're going to see, as you said, 10 years from now, we could potentially see the creation of a lot of new jobs in this area. Maybe some new academic channels for how to build sustainably, from when you break ground, for example. Like if you want to set up a new refinery, like how can you take that initial step and make it much more sustainable? Where does the dirt go when you put the first, shovel in? So asking those questions and saying like, how can we really make this very circular? And like, while we build it, can we make it circular? I noticed in one of your publications, actually, you mentioned urban mining as a potential way. Yeah, to alleviate the dependency. So I know urban mining will not be able to replace our dependency currently. I think the numbers were around like 6, potentially up to 12%, that we could like pull and recycle material from e-waste products, like computer chips and phones and whatnot. Even if that was possible to dismantle them in a way that we could extract those critical minerals, and do so safely and also in a way that doesn't add more pollution. Yeah. How do you see urban mining? Like, do you think that it will be the first step that will see a boom in terms of regaining some of our independence?
Yeah, I think so. I think you need also there in the circular economy more innovation and entrepreneurship to switch the pyramids, as they say, so that we reuse most of the resources. So it's a huge potential to reuse minerals as well. But you know, the growth of the electric industry, electric products like electric cars, for instance, makes it not necessary, as you said. We need more resources. We need more minerals than can be produced by the circular economy. So that we have a fundamental choice, either to continue making ourselves dependent on totalitarian regimes, or dig up the minerals ourselves. It's an essential dilemma that we need to solve. But we have had a lot of dilemmas. If we go back in history, if you go back to the World War II, I mean, we had huge dilemmas that we solved, you know. And we are now in a new situation where you have to meet disruptive changes, both when it comes to markets and the technology, and also the interaction between the technology and the markets, and so that that will be changing the societies probably a lot. But you have had that before also. Think about Detroit, for instance. That was the richest city in the world in the 1950s. You know, that was the same that happened to a city in Norway called Arendal. That was the capital of the sail ships in the late 1800s. But fell apart because of the steam engines. So to understand the fundamental changes that will disrupt industries and change the societies is essential, I think.
Do you think a third option is that we need to allow ourselves to be a little bit less comfortable, meaning like more uncomfortable in terms of what we consume, what we expect to have available to us at the grocery stores, you know, the clothes that we can purchase, the variety of clothes that we wear. Maybe it's even the cars that we own or that we can buy, because that's the third choice, right? The first choice was to accept. The second choice is to do nothing. And, you know, just, make it simple. But then there is a third choice, like a third option. And that's also to change our behavior as well at the same time.
Well, I'm a true believer in a more responsible consumption. Of course, when you go shopping, it's really important not to shop a lot of things you don't need. But that said, we also need to have economic growth. Economic growth is the essential driver of innovation and entrepreneurship. If we don't have economic growth, we will not have the necessary resources to use to the green shift. So that's essential.
Yeah, it's another conundrum, right? Where you want to buy less, but then the notion of buying less somehow feeds negatively into the economy. So economies are often described as having, like a lot of transactions typically describes some healthy economy or healthy growth. And I suppose that also continues to our growth. And perhaps that could be another topic for a podcast. What is a good indicator of economic growth? And are there other ways potentially to measure the health of an economy? I think that would be a super interesting topic and something I would love to learn more about personally. And I do believe that you would be someone that would have the right knowledge to weigh in on that conversation as well.
Absolutely. Just call me again.
I will.
We can have a
call you again.
New talk.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Arne. I really appreciate that you took the time to talk about these super important issues. And I look forward to sharing them with everyone I know.
Well, thank you very much, Shellie. And it was really nice to visit your podcast here. Thank you.